Uganda, as it is, currently boasts of over 21 accredited schools of law. Now, collectively, these churn out over 1,000 graduates every single year. Of these, some join the private legal practice, and some with the qualifications do make it over to public service. Those who are even luckier end up in civil society, and then a few others end up in the private sector. With this background, or with this, with this being taken into consideration, most of the lawyers, or a huge percentage of these, end up in private legal practice, thus subjecting them to an albeit competitive sphere. And against this background, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're premiering the Young Lawyer series, a show that's to ignite your spirits. Once again, you, the young lawyer, putting you on a path that is more certain, more aligned, and perhaps more sustainable. Joining us tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is none other than Charles Peter Mayiga, and your host tonight, Patrick Samogere. Now, the person before us, ladies and gentlemen, needs no introduction. He has been a legal practitioner for over 40 years, at the helm of a practice that has stood the test of time, making 30 years this year in March, established 1994. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, join me, as we welcome Charles Peter Mayiga, the Katikiro of Buganda. We're happy to have you. Thank you for welcoming us into your home on such short notice. And thank you for the work that you do that inspires and keeps young lawyers on their toes. We understand you look at things a little bit different, but that's also something that we admire and applaud. So, just to get right into it, there are a couple of young people out there who might not even know that Charles Peter Mayiga is a lawyer. So if it was put to you, be it as it may, who to you, how would you introduce Charles Peter Mayiga?
Thank you very much for having me, Patrick, and I'm happy to have this conversation, which I hope a number of young lawyers are following. I'm a lawyer, like you said. I'm a father. I'm a husband. Actually, I'm a grandfather.
Congratulations.
Because my daughter, my eldest daughter, has a son. I'm of the Mutima clan. My mother is of the Ngabi clan. I hail from Buddu, but in the administrative district of Masaka, although I've stayed most of my life in Kampala. I went to Makerere University. Of course, I attended LDC because I'm a lawyer. I went to St. Mary's College, Subi, for HSC, St. Henry's College, Tovu, for O-level, Nkoni Primary School, and Butale Primary School. They're all in Masaka. So, I am interested in writing. I'm interested in reading. I'm interested in music.
Interesting.
And I'm interested in sports. So, I think that's the summary. I used to do business. And I still do business at probably muted levels. But I was actively involved in businesses besides law practice. When you are Katikiro, you are restricted in many ways. So I think that summarizes who I am.
Who Charles Peter Mayiga is. Excellent. So, Owochitiba, you did mention that you went to law school, Makerere University, what we know as the Kasozi, and then moved on to LDC. So one would beg the question from, for those who have read a bit and for those who have heard you speak, you seem to be rather enthusiastic about business. So that begs the question, what got you into law school? What was the driving factor?
When I was in primary school, a teacher told us a story about how Ben Chiwanuka defended a client who was charged with murder. He said that a chief was collecting taxes in the villages, I think in Chotera. And towards evening, he came across a taxpayer who hadn't paid the taxes. I think it was the graduated tax, that's what they used to call it, and he kicked him, and the taxpayer collapsed onto the ground and died. the chief who was collecting taxes was charged with murder, and then he got Ben Chwanuka to defend him. This teacher told us that Ben Chwanuka went before the judge, and he told the judge that it's not possible that his client killed the deceased person. And to prove that, he was going to lie down, all robed up, and then his counterpart, I think the state attorney, would come and kick him. And if he didn't die, that means the accused didn't kill the deceased. Of course, you and I are lawyers.
Yes.
We know that that's not how we defend clients. Neither are criminal trials conducted in that fashion. But when you're in primary school, you're probably 10 or 11. You believe what the teacher tells you. You know, primary school teachers are also very young. And I don't think the teacher knew how lawyers do their job, specifically how criminal trials are conducted. So I made up my mind to become a lawyer then.
From that point?
From that point on, I said, this was smart. I'm going to be a lawyer myself. And by the way, I met Benedicto Chwanuka when I was a little boy in 1972, before he was murdered. And because my father knew him, so it was at an event in Masaka at a seminary called Bukalasa. So when he came out of his car, he greeted everyone. Then my father introduced his entire family to him. I put out my little hand and I shook his hand. And up to the time the teacher told us the story, the memories were vivid. He came out of the black Mercedes with a flag. He was the Chief Justice. Black suit. I thought he was the smartest person on earth. You know. And when the teacher tells him the story about how he by this time, Ben had been killed, by the way.
Okay.
Because he was killed in 1972. This was the story the teacher told us, I think it was 1974 or 5, I don't remember. And then I said, I'm going to be a lawyer.
And which class were you by that time?
When the teacher told us the story?
Yes.
I think it was P5, something like that. Because I did my P7 in 1976, before anyone here was born. And I went to law school in 1983, you know. Probably before you were born. All these guys here were not born. And so I believe what the teacher had said. Before then, I thought I would become a priest.
Oh, okay.
Because my uncle, actually there is a picture of him there in the unit. My uncle was a priest, and he was very close to my dad. And he was always home. You know, they come in cassocks with priests and all these things. And all through, I thought I would be a priest. When the priests came for the interviews to join the seminary, because you join the seminary, the minor seminary after P7, I just ran to the football pitch to play football. And when I went home, I lied to my mother, who wanted me to become a priest, that I had taken the interview. But then when they called out those who were joining the seminary, my name wasn't announced, and I told my mother I'd failed the interview. Eventually, I told her I'd lied to her.
You came clean. I
came clean. I told her I wanted to join St. Henry's College. Then my mother was okay with it. But by the time I joined St. Henry's College, I wanted to be a lawyer.
So you knew. With this memory and, you know, that picture, the vivid memories, you were able to, you know, with the story, you know, carry your inspiration beyond primary school.
Yes.
And then stand firm and join St. Henry's. St. Henry's College, Chitovo.
Yes, then St. Mary's College, Suvi. For A-level.
Excellent. So, with the memory that you share, very vivid memories from way back. I mean, I wasn't even born when the farm came into existence.
1994. You people are very young.
But I think that says something about, you know, the quality of mentorship that, you know, Buwule Mayiga does, but we'll get back into that. So, just getting back to the memories, right? You vividly remember this. It was a driving factor to push you through finishing primary school. You elected to avoid the interviews, to join the seminary, went to Chitovo, then finally SMAC, and then at the end Makerere University. Did you at one point envisage that with this dream that you had, because I'm thinking since it was Benedicto Chwanuka, you would most likely end up as, you know, at the end of the private legal practice, end up in public service. Did you ever envisage that you would stray from that path and end up where you are now?
Never.
as the Buganda Premier? Never.
Never, ever. First of all, when we were growing up, like in the 70s, I started my primary school I joined St. Andrews College in 1977. The monarchies had been banned. And when I joined the university, even when I joined the university, the monarchies were banned. My friends now tell me, when we were in SMAC and at Makerere, that I used to say that we should have the monarchy back. I don't.
So it's not something you vividly remember.
I don't remember me saying that, but many of my friends tell me that I used to say that. But what I know I used to say was that Obote had no right to deny people what they want. Nobody has a right to deny, your religion, for example, or your heritage, or your beliefs. Nobody has that right. So I would argue that argument I know I used to make many times because I was an ardent debater in SMARC. I was an ardent debater. And I would argue them, conversations you have with your friends. Because my father, viewed Obote with disdain. Every time he would talk about Milton Obote, he was bitter about what happened in 1966.
Understandably.
Yes.
Given the time.
So when you grow up, you normally you share the beliefs of your parents, by and large. If your parents believe that Obote did wrong, you're likely to believe that yourself. And so I would argue that Obote had no right to ban the monarchies. If the Baganda one day Kabaka, they can have him. But I don't remember specifically saying that the monarchies will be reinstated. But going back to your question in specific terms, when I finished law school and went to LDC, I was thinking of doing business and practicing law. And no way, not even once, did I ever think I would get where I am. And when I finished LDC, I went to the DPP. I was a state attorney, people's state attorney. Then I was there for about 3 years. And then I decided to go to Chikubo, full-time business. Because I started doing business when I was in Makerere. And of course, business is rewarding. If anyone wants to get rich, then one must sell goods.
Trading
or maybe services. But if but real money is in trade, buying and selling of goods. Largely, that's how people make money. So I, made some money. I mean, some money in those days because I bought a car in about 3 months after LDC.
That's Chikubo, or that was Chikubo alongside LDC?
No. When I was in LDC, I was doing businesses.
Some business, yes.
But when I finished LDC, I joined the government. But I was doing business at the same time.
At the same time.
After doing business, after practicing for about 3 years, I quit government and I went to Chikubo full time. Now, my friend and partner, Francis Buwule, never wanted for even 1 minute that I, leave the law and go and do business. Because, the I don't know whether I should call it old school.
Yes.
It's old school. I mean, if you study medicine, you've got practice medicine. If you study law, you're supposed to practice law. I think that's old school. Whatever you study in university is basic. It's like reading and writing. You can do whatever you want after that, I believe. Although practicing what you studied in the university is also fine, because after all, the country needs the lawyers, doesn't it? So for me, doing business was rewarding. Like I told you, the first acquisitions I had after training as a lawyer, I bought them with the money I used to generate from business.
From Chikubo?
From Chikubo. I bought a car, I bought a plot of land. Then I, at one point, decided to go full-time and I work in Chikubo. And that didn't go down well with Francis Buwule, one of the founding partners of Buwule Mayiga Advocates. So he was never, not even once did I remember him speaking approvingly of my move.
Interesting. So if I may ask, you with the DPP for 3 years, and then you're doing business back then.
Yes.
And from what you say, it was rewarding.
Yes.
So at what point do you say enough is enough? You know, let me switch fully to Chikubo.
Because we finished all this, I think it was 1988. Then I went into, because I did my clerkship with the DPP.
Oh.
Yes. So they just took me on. They just took me on.
What we call retention nowadays, I guess.
They called it retention, maybe.
Yes.
They gave me a placement. My immediate boss was Mr. Dosman Kabega, was the deputy DPP. Mr. Peter Kabatz of Kampala Associated Advocates was the DPP. Justice Kanye Hamba, I think, was the Attorney General. Those days, the Minister of Justice was also the Attorney General, not like now.
Okay.
So they just took me on. Oh, before then, there was another gentleman before Mr. Kabatz, who was the DPP. I forget his name. I think he's deceased now. Anyway, I went back and started, doing the work of, I was in the Department of Public Prosecutions. I think Mr. Kabega believed I would do fine, because he would assign me some big cases quite early on. I think he thought I would become a good prosecutor. That's what I think, because he even sent me to the Supreme Court when I was still the People's Attorney, and actually I
less than 3 years in.
Yes, and I was successful before the justices of the Supreme Court. It was an appeal. It was a robbery case, aggravated robbery. The man had been sentenced to death by the High Court, and then he appealed to the Court of Appeal. Then he went to the Supreme Court. I was surprised when Mr. Kabega told me to handle the case. I went. The Supreme Court used to sit in Mengo.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and I was also surprised. I was pleasantly surprised that I carried the day, and the appeal was dismissed. But I just didn't think. I think it was a question of money. I thought, the civil servants were being paid peanuts. And I would sit down and think, how am I going to live on this salary? And if I don't concentrate on business, I won't make it either in business. So let me just go and do business. Because whatever I had, I'd gotten from business. That's when I made the move.
That's interesting.
In I think because when we finished all this in 1988, I went straight to the DPPs. I was there through 1989. I think in 1990, towards the end, then I quit and I went to Chikubo.
That's a very interesting perspective. But just before we get into that, for those listening and watching, we're streaming live on X, the Buwule Mayiga page, and then we're also streaming live on our new YouTube channel. So for those who have access to either, feel free to tune into whichever best suits your needs and current location. So back to your Wechitiba. You leave DPP and then go into Chikubo.
Yes.
And you said it came down to the money, Now, the interesting thing is, though, we learned from your book, Work and Prosper, that a couple of businesses have followed. Even with your good friend, Omukungu, Francis Buwule, Kabonge, you did have a couple of enterprises that actually did together, that are actually very successful, So one would beg the question, so money is important. Mr. Buwule says practice should be respected, but the two of you end up in business. So this makes me ask the question then, is it important for a young lawyer or for a lawyer that wants to practice, as the topic says, both profitably but also keeping that ethics, on the right level? Is it important for someone to have a side business per se?
Side businesses, I think these days are called side hustles.
Yes.
They never
That's the right
succeed.
word.
That's my observation. Business only succeeds when you focus on it. And when you're a young lawyer, you've got to perfect the art. You've got to understand how the law works. Law school is just law school. The real lessons are in practice.
In actual practice.
Actual practice. And you've got to give your heart and mind and soul to the legal practice. Now, when you start a side hustle, as they call them, you're going to entrust it probably to somebody who may not have the passion you have. He may not even be honest. And most of the time, side hustles don't generate the profits. But then they distract you. When we started the business, as you're talking about with Francis Buwule, I think we had gotten some traction as far as legal practice was concerned. And we started other businesses. And we had even associates we were working with in the law firm. But even then, why the businesses suffered, again, is because we didn't have enough time to supervise them.
To juggle.
You juggle these things, and one of them must suffer. People must make up their minds what they want to do and concentrate on that. These days, I talk about coffee a lot. I tell people to grow coffee. And, you know, people who work in offices they're always complaining about farming. They said it is not rewarding because it's a side hustle. This is what happens. Somebody works in Buwule Mayiga from 8 to 5 to 6 to 7. You are here right now. It's late. And somebody works from Monday to Friday. On Friday, he goes to unwind with friends. A couple of beers. You sleep late. You wake up at 10 in the morning. At 11, you go to visit the farm to check on your...
Saturday.
On a Saturday, you go to check on your coffee shamba at 11 in shorts and slippers. And at 1, people are calling you. They want you to go and eat pork. That is what happens. And to watch football. So you go to some place and watch football and drink and eat muchomo. How on earth are you going to get money from that farm?
Those are 2 hours.
2 hours out of, you know, the time you have in a week. Other people have, especially ladies, have got salons, have side hustles. You work in a bank. You are still in the bank by this time. You're still balancing. Then you go to check on these girls who worked on the ladies who came to the salon. They're going to cheat you. You don't know how the customers feel because you don't have the time. You're not focused on them. So the question of side hustles is very tricky. If somebody wants to succeed in the legal profession, people must choose. If you want to go and grow coffee, go and grow coffee. But there are certain businesses which don't require a lot of time. Or which don't require direct supervision. Let's say real estate. Let's say financial instruments. Those can be carried out by someone because if you bought a bond, you know, government bond, nothing is required of you, really.
It keeps.
The bank, your agent, which is the bank, is the one that superintends all the operations. They just give you your coupon every now and again. That is easy. I don't know if that could be called a side hustle. Real estate also doesn't require a lot of day-to-day supervision, but it's also tricky. But what is important is for people to work diligently. You can make it as a lawyer if you work diligently.
And exert yourself.
Yeah.
I can imagine. So, what we've gotten into business. You've spoken highly about Mr. Buwule, as you've done in a couple of your interviews. My question is, you started Buwule Mayiga in 1994.
Yes.
You were in Chikuba prior. He didn't want you to do business back then.
He wanted me to do business for as long as I was practicing law.
Oh, so that
primarily.
Was oh,
his concern was that here I was, a lawyer. I think he believed I could be a good lawyer. But then I chose to go and mingle with the guys in Chikubu, stay with them. You know, I would board all these lorries, go to Jinja to get merchandise. I would go further than Jinja. One time I slept in Busoga, we were buying maize. You know, buying maize and supplying it. Then you go to buy it and you go deep in Busoga, in Idudi, and we slept in the villages there. I don't think he was very comfortable with that. You know, that is the thinking we are all tuned into if you believe that the only thing a lawyer can do is practice law. It's going to disturb you whenever he would not have traveled to Jinja. And maybe I wasn't making sufficient profits. As it should be. When we just started business, even there, the profits are going to be small. So I think in his mind was like, what is this guy doing in Ichiku? He's struggling. He's a lawyer. He should practice law. So he didn't mind the business for as long as I was practicing law. That is the reason when his boss, Ochitiva John Katende of Katende Sempe and Co-Advocates, was looking for somebody who could do administrative, calm, legal work for the Sabataka Supreme Council. The Sabataka Supreme Council was the precursor to the Buganda Luchiko. Okay. So he came knocking. He said, you can do this job. I think he wanted to keep me out from Chikuba as well. And I said, fine. I took it on. I didn't know it was going to be a full-time job. Like I told you, my father was very critical of Milton Obote. So, and by then he was dead anyway. But working the Sabataka Supreme Council was like making my humble contribution towards the heritage of the kingdom. You remember my father, you know, was very critical of Obote. Now the Kabaka is back. He's not yet crowned, but he's back in the country. His Sabataka is moving all over the place. People are running to see him wherever he used to go. And he sets up this council, and Francis wants me to work to be in charge of administration. There were lots of legal issues because the law hadn't been amended. You know, the constitution outlawed monarchies. The properties of the kingdom had been confiscated by the regime of Milton Obote. So there was work to be done in that area, the legal area and the administration. So I took it on. I thought I would do it together with my Chikubo business. And I was so wrong because it was very consuming. So I would find myself working at the secretariat of the Sabataka Supreme Council from 8 to 5 to 7 to 8. There was a lot of work. And I didn't know that I was making an impression on my bosses. Oh. I wasn't aware at all. I just did what my father used to tell me, whatever is put before you, you must do it to the best of your ability. That's all that I was doing. I didn't know that I was making an impression. I wasn't aware at all. So I was sucked in, and actually I stopped the business, the Chikubo business. I was the Sabataka Supreme Council for 3 years, from 1991 to 1994 when we started the law firm. Yeah. But we would meet every day, Francis and other members of a club called Malum. Oh. It's a social club of friends. Which actually still exists. Yes. To date. So we would meet every evening, we would meet and we would discuss. So towards the, I think towards the June 1993, we started talking about having law practice. He was working with Katende Sempe and Co-Advocates. There were 3 other friends with whom we went to law school. Then we sat and said, Francis was working with Katende Sempe and Co-Advocates. I was working with the Kabaka, with the kingdom. It hadn't been, the kingdom, of course, the Kabaka was crowned in July 1993. Actually, after the coronation, I was like, maybe I've played my part. However humble it may have been, I felt maybe I've played my part. Now, I think it's time to move on now. So we would meet and talk about law practice, our own law firm. And we named the project Sunrise. We named it Sunrise Project. The five of us.
Oh, you're 5 lawyers.
We were 5 lawyers. The 4 of us were in law school at the same time. One of us was younger than us, but he was our friend. So we named the project Sunrise. So the minutes, I think, still exist. And the minutes of Sunrise Project. But it was about setting up a law firm. But then 3 of them dropped off. One of them got a job as a company secretary somewhere. Another went out of the country to do law in that country where I went. Another got a job with a parastatal. And it remained only the 2 of us. We pushed on with the project.
And you walked the path.
And yeah, true. We set up the law firm. So we started towards I think July. We resolved that we're going to set up the law firm. I think after about the discussions about 2-3 months, the other guys dropped off, and the 2 of us remained, and we were determined to start the law firm. And we said it would be named Buwule Mayiga Advocates because he enrolled before me.
Oh, okay, so that explains the B then.
The B and M, because he enrolled before me. And because I was in with the DPP, when you're the DPP, you don't need to be enrolled to go to court. Unlike someone in private practice. So, because I was working with the Katena and Sempe, where he enrolled before me, I enrolled, I think, a year or 2 later. By that time, I was already an advocate when we decided to
actually start.
I enrolled when I was working with the Kabaka, actually, in the South Africa Supreme Council. Actually, Justice John Mwesigwa is the one who introduced me, presented me to the CJ. He was an advocate then. And when he said, I work with the South Africa Supreme Council, the people in the court burst out and laughed, wondering what a young man like I was doing with what they thought was a moribund sort of
at the time.
Organization. At that time, I think that's what they thought. I didn't see it that way. I thought this was a very serious matter. This is our heritage. We must work for its restoration, for its resurrection, if you want. That's what I believed. I can be very passionate about, things I believe. Anyway, we decided to start the law firm. We didn't have the money. We borrowed money. There was money borrowed from a businessman who was very close to Francis. I borrowed money from a sister of mine. We borrowed money from a friend, a member of Club Malum. We went to Ndeva and had furniture made on credit. My brother helped us get 2 telephone lines.
That's UTL?
UTL. It was a big deal those days because, getting a telephone line was very, very difficult. My brother was working with UTL, so he managed to get us 2 telephone lines. And then my wife surrendered our home kettle. So that we could make coffee. And my daughter, who you saw here, was just a baby.
Gabriella.
Just a baby. And a neighbor gave us a typewriter, a manual typewriter. I think it's kept as a souvenir in the farm.
It's in an office somewhere.
Yes, that typewriter was given to us by
a neighbor.
A neighbor, my neighbor in Najana Nkumbi. I was staying in Najana Nkumbi.
Interesting, small world.
So I talked to her. She's a very good friend of ours, Betty Tindi. I think when we celebrated 25 years, we invited her at Serena. This time maybe we invited the lawyers we've worked with over the years. So she gave us that typewriter. It was hers. She gave it to us. So what else happened? We banked from the money we borrowed. We banked some money because we had one staffer, Betty Kagwan. Unfortunately, she passed away. She was the secretary. She was the clerk. She was the cashier. She was everything. So on the 1st of March, because we did all these things over a period of months, we got tenancy in City Hall. I think Sudhir had then bought that building. We got tenancy, we paid for, I think, 6 months. And then we collected the furniture, which we got on credit from Mr. John Kalanda Mwembe. He's the father of Francis Kalanda, the advocate.
Kalanda,
yes, his dad made us 3 desks. 1 desk for me, 1 desk for my partner, and 1 desk for the secretary.
For Betty, yes.
And then he made us 9 straight back chairs. 1 for me, and 2 for my clients. 1 for my partner and 2 for his clients, and 1 for Betty and 2 for the the visitors, and then a bench, which he fitted with a cushion.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's for clients.
For the clients, in case you've got more than 2 clients who are seated before Betty, others can wait on the bench. So we collected our furniture, set it up, got the telephone lines fixed. We demarcated the offices, the law council.
At that time.
Well, with wood, we got a carpenter, I think from, again, Mr. Kalanda Mwembe, I don't remember now, and because the law council requires that every lawyer must have privacy, so that when the clients come and they're telling you they're private businesses, it is confidential. So we demarcated an office for me, an office for Mr. Buwule, then there was the general waiting room. Oh, and another office for the coffee room, where I would make coffee. That was on City House.
Where the signature percolator was.
Huh?
Where the signature percolator was kettle.
Not just a kettle, the ordinary kettles which you fix into the mains, the electricity mains. It wasn't a percolator like the ones we
have nowadays.
These days. Because we thought we don't have money to have lunch, at least we'd make a cup of coffee and maybe buy, nuts and chew them so that, go through the day. I remember the day like it happened yesterday. I boarded a taxi at Stella Stage because I was taking Najana Nkumbi to the old car park, and I walked up William Street to City House. And I was there by 8. I sat with my newspapers. I thought I was going to be reading newspapers. Before I'd finished, I think the first newspaper, I bought Monitor and New Vision. I think Monitor had started, yes, and New Vision. Before I finished reading the Monitor, somebody walked in and he said he wanted to buy land and he wanted a sale agreement. I could not believe it. I could not believe it.
On the first day?
On the first day, on the 1st of March. That was the first income that came in. So on the first day, we had lunch. So, and then somebody came and opened the file, and then,
One thing after the other.
Yeah.
There's a lot of intentionality that goes into this. However, I think one thing that we struggle with as young lawyers, you are 5 when you're starting. When you
we were
2.
Start,
yes, when you intended to
we
start.
intended to be 5, but the others chickened out.
And you
Actually, one of them said, I and Francis could never make it in life.
So
never, forget the law practice. He said he would never succeed anywhere with anything.
Working with Mr. Kabonge.
He said the 2 of us.
The 2 of you, okay.
The 2 of us would never be successful doing anything.
Interesting.
I don't know what informed him of that opinion, but that's what he said.
Well, I guess you can see where we are right now. So, my question is really, why Francis Buwule Kabonge? And what did you see in him that perhaps a young lawyer who is about to up and leave, a law firm where they are, or that perhaps is, leaving law school, but cultivating, the dreams or plans of starting their own practice? What was it that Mr. Francis Buwule Kabonge had, that has made you walk this 30-year journey?
Well, when we were in law school together, and at LDC, his room was next to mine. He used to stay with Stephen Chisiti, who unfortunately died in 2006. He was actually both our best man. And I used to stay with John Kasule. But our rooms were next to each other. So I think I got to know him more when we were at LDC. Because he was a Lumumbist, and I was a goat.
regrettably, like the shame was.
I was a good.
Yes.
That's the only
University hall,
called
yes.
University Hall. So we would meet at the law school and we would go our ways. And socially, we never used to meet then.
Oh.
Yeah. I think he was more calm than I was. I was a little rowdy. You know, I would party a little more than him, I think. So we would never really meet. But until Uatelo DC was next door to me. He's a calm man, he's very intentional. He purposeful. You can always see someone who's purposeful. And when we left the university, Stephen Chisiti, the one I told you who was both our best man, was the first of us to get married. And I was his best man. And I was the chairman of the wedding meeting. And Francis was the secretary of that wedding.
So you had
He married we married when we were very young. He married in 1988, I married in 1989. And that even brought me closer to him. We formed Club Maalum in 1989. Then we started, being together. So when you look at your friends, you go to understand them. This is someone, a man of his word. Integrity is key. So I think I felt he was someone I could do business with. I think he felt the same. Otherwise, he wouldn't have teamed up with me, especially after the other three had dropped off. So I think I thought we could do business with him. And I think, you said 30 years, I think we complement each other. We complemented each other. Where I would move very fast, he would pull me down. Where he would move a little slower, I would pull him up. So we complemented each other. I think, unfortunately, we were both right about each other.
So to say, yes.
Because you stay with people when you are true to yourself, when you are true to your partner. We never played market tricks in Buwule Mayiga Advocates. There wasn't a single time we carried out transactions under the table. We didn't think that was necessary. Your partners, you got a big deal, you got a big deal. Your partner should know. He would get the big deals, I would know. I would get the big deals, he would know. We were open and true to each other. Actually, originally, we would buy even the same cars.
Really?
Yes. In 1998, I think, we both bought black Camrys, and we caused some shivers in town. Same color, and the numbers were following each other. The registration numbers.
Oh,
we would do it intentionally.
At the same time?
Yeah, at the same time. We'd buy them at the same time. Then after that, we bought Suzuki's. Same color, same everything, numbers following each other. Then when this craze of the four wheels came, and, he opted for I think I opted for a Surf, and I think he opted for what do you call these cars? I think they're called, what is the name of my car? You know it.
It's a Land Cruiser.
I think a Land Cruiser, but not of this make.
Yes, a Prado. I think. Is it the one that you had before?
I don't think you saw that. That came later. So we would buy the same cars. So that just shows you that we would get the money from the same kitty. You know the price, you go and
Full
buy
exposure.
Full exposure. I think that's what kept us going. And there were no market tricks with us. I don't like under-table deals. By nature, I want open things. I think he's the same. So I think that kept us going. One of the challenges for young lawyers is that materialism has consumed the country a great deal these past, I think, 20 years, which wasn't the case when we started practice. Every young lawyer wants to drive the biggest car, He wants to go to the biggest hotels, you know. But then a big car costs a lot of money.
Maintenance.
Yeah, but even the original price of a big car,
At purchase.
you know, it costs a lot of money. And if the price of the survival of your farm is a car, then you don't know what you're doing. Because you can have so many cars in good time. If you think short term, you probably get a good deal. You do not want to disclose this money to the farm. You want to go and buy a big car. In any case, they will know, because people ask, how did you get the money to buy the big car? Then people won't trust you. And when they don't trust you, the firm is going to collapse. The partners are going to split. You know, in our days, there was what used to be called open book exam. I don't know if they still exist.
Yes, they do. Partial at LDC?
At LDC.
Yes.
Open book. For us, the practice was open book. And we would say, okay, you brought this deal. You got this client. There is a percentage for you because you got the client.
So that's the commission.
Yes. You got your percentage clean and open. And then the rest of the money goes in the coffers of the firm for the operations of the firm. This is just to motivate everyone to get clients, get all these lawyers, these clients. Media Challenge Initiative. Bring them on board. When you bring them on board, you get your commission. Then you must be open about it. If they pay 10 million, I don't know what the commission is these days, but whatever it is, you take your commission and the rest goes into the farm to carry out.
The boss is listening.
So we were very open with each other. We never had reasons to play market tricks or to do under-table deals. I think the trust is the bond. And we learned from older hands, Katenda and Sempebwa, for example. They've been together since 1969. I think it's one of the oldest law firms in Uganda.
In the country.
And Professor Edward Sempebwa and Mr. Katenda have been together since then. Actually, I think we copied this thing of buying the same cars from them. They used to buy the same cars back then in the day. Those two senior counsel, they used to buy the same cars. You know, the numbers, the registration numbers following each other. I think we got that from them. After all, Francis was working with them. So trust is very important. And that's what builds the bond. And that's what enables you to stay a long time
Together.
Yes.
Speaking of trust and speaking of clients, you've had clients who have stayed a very long period of time. I mean, even from the club that the two of you are part of, you've been able to sustain your clients over time. And one thing that we struggle with really nowadays is client retention. A client will be with you today and the client will be out the door tomorrow withdrawing instructions. How have you been able to, or how are you able to cultivate these relationships to a point that you sustain them, sometimes even beyond the lifespan of the person who walks into your office?
Well, I think if a client believes you are working for his or her interests, beyond your need to be paid, if you working for the interests of your client and the client notices it, they're going to stay. If the client thinks your only interest is money, they're going to go away. And one way of showing interest in the work of the client is feedback. If I go to court and the judge wasn't there for whatever reason, the client may not even be there, especially if it's a civil case. Then you've got to inform the client about the progress of the case. You're going to suggest the best possible solutions. For example, if a client comes with a bad case, if you want to retain that client, you're going to tell them that this is not a good case for you.
Outrightly.
Yes. Of course, if you tell him that, he may not pay you money. But if he pays you money to handle a case which he eventually notices wasn't going to be won, he's going to run away from you. I know, at times you tell them this is a bad case, they may still go away. There are clients who are very adamant.
And aggressive.
Very adamant. Others, clients used to tell me that, look, I know you've told me it's a bad case, but go and file the case nonetheless. Clients who want to buy time and things like that. Or clients who believe they will somehow pull it off. Go and file the case nonetheless. So, in that case, you may file even when you know the case is not good. But generally, if a client notices that you are interested in his or her business, they are going to stay with you. For example, if a client is an industrialist, and they will know when they can see that you're interested in the growth of their business, they will notice. When they have difficulties, they may not even be related to the law. They want to see you standing with them. You've got to make your clients your friends. You know, law practice is in a way similar to medical practice. You know, have you ever gone into an office of a doctor who makes you nervous?
As a child, mostly.
Well, forget about being a child because they're going to, inject you with that makes you nervous. But generally, even as an adult, when you go and talk to a doctor who's your friend, there is a way you trust whatever advice he gives you, or even instructions. If he's not your friend, you will walk into another hospital, clinic, and tell them, yes, my doctor told me this, but I don't think what he told me is right. Do you think what he told me is right? That shows you don't trust him. But if a lawyer builds a relationship with a client, beyond the instructions, they are going to stay. Go and have a cup of coffee with them. When they are celebrating things, join them. When they have difficulties, go and comfort them. Because law practice is about finding the legal solutions to your client. The lawyer is expected to shoulder the stress of the client.
Absorb the shock.